Hey, what's going on, everybody? Joe Menza here, and in this video I'm going to do some different paper here. I've got hot press paper, and it's 12 by 16 Winsor and Newton, 140 pound. So I'm putting my usual water on here, and now the tricky thing with this paper is it doesn't quite absorb water. It stays wetter longer. You can play around with things. It has its benefits. Colors look brighter on it. But it doesn't really dry the same as your regular cold press. It's the way the paper is made. And it has its benefits. Like I said, it stays brighter. The colors are brighter on there. They kind of stay more on top. Right now I'm doing the usual, putting the sky in, sort of following the same program here. I'm using some yellow ochre and just sort of randomly getting some sky in. Do another lovely mountain scene. So now I'm taking some ultramarine blue, and you can see the way this is cascading down the paper. You can see how the sheen is and how wet it's staying on top. So it's going to take a little bit more effort to kind of get the sky I'm looking for, but it gives you an opportunity to kind of keep things open and play a little bit more. A little alizarin crimson, more or less doing this to kind of show you the look of it on the paper. A little bit of glare from my overhead light there. So now I'm just taking my brush and I'm taking reverse painting out some of the paint, which is much easier on the hot press. Again, kind of just sculpting it here. A clean brush, and keep cleaning it, and you can keep lifting out as much of the paint as you want. And you can even take a little cloth, just like with the other paper, but it will lift out much more of the paint. Just gave it a little spray with the spray bottle. And again, more lifting. This one here I recorded more for my own use to see how I was working with the paper, and it turned out pretty well, so I thought I'd share it with everyone. And I'm narrating this one because I was very focused at the time. So a bit longer of a video. Now, as you can see, if you try to blend things in, it creates a little bit of a streaky effect. Not quite as easy to do as on the cold press paper. So there's a lot of little trial and error here. I've not really used this paper before for this. So if you've never tried it, this is what it's like. And you can see here, it's still wet. You can really rub off the paint. So it looks rather a mess here, doesn't it? I've tried blending it like I've done before, but instead I'm going to come in with some more color here because it's just not reacting in the way that I'm used to. And with this start that I'm off to here, it's a wonder anything really turned out with this at all. Back to the ultramarine blue, kind of painting around the clouds. So you're seeing me here the first time I've used this paper. It was on sale at one of the art stores. Paper comes in a block and it's glued all the way around. I actually made the mistake of thinking I could paint on the whole pad, but it loosened up the glue and it got underneath, and I ended up getting a couple of sheets with some mess underneath. So now I'm taking my Frank Clark goat hair brush because it's pretty soft and I'm trying to do some blending with it. I figured because the paper stays open wetness wise, I could do a lot of nice feathering of the colors. And you almost can. You can see I'm starting to kind of smooth it out a little bit here. Let's zoom back in here. I'm going to start putting in some mountains here. And rather than try to make triangles like we do with mountains normally, or M-shaped shapes, I'm just going straight down. I'm going to come back in with some white gouache and create some slopes, so I'm not too concerned about the shape. I can shape this later. Just kind of making this up really from a scene in my mind. Now I'm taking a little bit of a cloth and I'm just kind of lightening that as it comes down, just kind of blending that down. It's almost the way you'd see kind of Bob Ross do it. It's not quite as easy with watercolor like it is with oil because it dries, but on this paper you can get away with a little bit more. Giving it a little spray with the spray bottle, helping to blend it a little more. You can see we've got that blended effect now. I'm going to take my card, and even though I'm going to go do some white on here, I just kind of want to create some guidelines here for myself. Just to kind of get an idea where I'm going to go. And you could do this and leave it like that if you like. You don't have to use white. It's starting to take shape now, as you can see. Hope all of you are doing well with your painting out there. If you have any questions, you can leave them in the comments section. happy to answer anything. And if you come over to our Ron Ranson group over on Facebook, a lot of helpful people there, a lot of people at different points in their journey. And you'll get a lot of help and tips and things like that. We've got well over 600 people in our group. Be sure to answer the entry questions and join us. You can see how much more you can move things around on this paper. I didn't think I'd like it, but I did end up liking it. I think for a certain type of picture, certain type of painting, it really has its place. I'm creating more of a base here. You're probably saying, well, you just created that lightning effect, but and see, look, you can almost wipe this off. It's interesting paper. You can wipe the whole thing off if you're not happy with what you painted. Really great for wet into wet. Creating some water here for what will be sort of a stream. Getting all the basic colors in here. I had a good time painting this. I don't want to say this is more advanced, but there's definitely a lot more going on here. So you can watch my beginner videos if you're new to painting. I hope this inspires you to maybe pick up a brush. As you can see, I've sort of documented. If you follow me on Instagram, Joe Menza Art, you can see my paintings going back almost 2 years. You can really see my progression. That was one of the fun things that I found in this particular hobby is sharing with other people and showing your work. It's like an extension of the actual painting and putting it out there and just seeing what happens. And pretty much everybody's very encouraging. Even stuff I think is terrible, people will say they like it. I mean, everybody has different tastes, but it'll encourage you to go forward. It'll bring you some tips for painting. Share your work. Get into the whole hobby of it. There's not a lot of places to really share your work. You can show your family, but you post it online and say, hey, what do you think? And post everything. Say that I'm planning on doing this, and post your first work on there. This is my first painting. And then maybe 6 months from now, you'll be like, hey, look at where I am now. And it's a really documented, great way to document your progress. Don't feel intimidated to do it, because most people can't really do this right off the bat. I mean, just a little, if anyone. Almost everybody has to practice doing it. So I've put some yellow ochre, cad yellow hue to set the stage for some grassy areas here. I really want that to contrast against the greens that I'm going to put in. So I went as bright as I possibly could. And I'm going to start laying in some grasses here. You can see now that I put in those closer little hills, it kind of pushed the other thing back a little bit. In the beginning stages, when you're learning, you're going to be just learning how to brush works and getting water on the brush and laying paints down. And then down the road, once you start getting more accustomed to it, you'll start thinking about perspective and pushing things back and distance and colors. It'll just, like playing the piano. I mean, you start off with chopsticks, and then before you know it, you're playing, more advanced pieces. Everybody's posting their lives on social media now, so why not post your art hobby, your art career, your art journey? It's therapeutic. I mean, you'll paint, you'll get lost in the world of painting. I find it's a good anxiety release. Takes your focus onto something nice. And that's why I've decided to share it with people. I actually didn't think I'd get I didn't think I'd improve in the beginning. I thought, oh, this is terrible. And I'd look at other people on YouTube and I'd say, wow, I'm never going to get there. But you just keep painting every day or 2-3 times a week at least, and you'll notice improvement. We have so many members in our group that started off. You should see what they're doing now. And we've kind of created, I think, hopefully we've created a trend, an awareness to this fast and loose way of painting, because it's enjoyable and it's got fast, it's got more immediate results. In today's day and age of 1-day shipping, people want stuff quick. They don't have time really to take days and weeks and months on a painting. So now I'm going to put some foliage off to the side over here. This is more or less to push the viewer to the left to kind of go back toward the mountain, create some focus. I'm varying up the colors here. We're using some Payne's Gray, Cad Yellow, Ultramarine Blue, trying to keep some sky holes in, taking the card and scratching in some limbs. Whether or not those will be there in the end, I never know. I'm just tapping in, just so you see some peeking out there. I get sometimes too aggressive with the brush and I end up not leaving any sky holes. Very easy to do. I'm just drawing in some, or painting in some darker limbs now. Had this coming in from the side, but this isn't really working. Sometimes you try something and you're like, I don't know. I've moved over to the right, by the way, as a lot of times I do use a hair dryer, but I've kind of gotten away from it to some degree, and I jump around the paper, or I may just stop painting and walk away and let it dry, rather than use the hair dryer. If I do that, I'll pause the video if I'm filming something, but I've just kind of gotten more. I mean, if you're in a situation you don't have a hair dryer, like sometimes on my lunch I'll do a video. I don't have a hair dryer there. I do have a little heater next to me, but I don't really have time to wait for drying too much, so I'll jump around the page while something else is drying. So now I'm coming back over here and I'm just working on some of the foreground areas, working with burnt umber here. I'm going a little further to the right here, trying to make that stream make a right turn there. You notice as soon as you put that in there, see how it turns to the right now, and you can almost start to imagine that going way back there. Again, I'm blending with this Frank Clark goat hair brush. It's a nice brush. Varying up the greens and the foliage and having those contrast against the yellow. Now I'm creating a bank as we get closer. Nice dark bank. Burnt umber Payne's gray. My go-to is kind of burnt umber Payne's gray. A lot of people say not to use Payne's gray. They try to combine like the primaries and make grays or darks. I don't know, the Payne's gray for me, it's a really great color. It's like black with blue in it. You just have to be careful with it because it'll really deaden certain areas, but it's a great color to have on your palette. Cleaning up this stream a little bit. I want to keep it a little open there. Just taking a cloth. I don't mind wiping a little paint out. It creates little areas of light and brightness. And again, being that this is hot press, you have a little more time to work. I would be opposed to using this again. And actually I have, since I painted this one, I did sort of a forest, little waterfall river type thing. It's on my Instagram page. I didn't shoot a video for it, but that one turned out well too. Now you can see we've got that river going all the way back. There's no mistake about it. Again, just working on the banks. Using that blending again. For me, it creates like a smudged effect. I don't know if you've ever used like a Photoshop type program where you paint something and then you use the smudge and it creates like these blended areas. It's kind of what I've tried to do here. And there's something about it when you do the blending. It just adds to the realistic look. So it's a technique that I've been using quite a lot. When you first start painting, you're afraid to do anything. I mean, you just paint and, you don't even want to touch something for fear of messing it up. But when you start getting more adept at it, you go in there and you start wiping things and moving things. You kind of know what it can do. So like right here now, I've lost a little bit where that river is when I put that brown in there. So I'm just going to I'm taking a little flat brush here and just lifting out. And even if that doesn't work, there's with the paper towel, even if that doesn't work, you can take a little bit of white and you can even lay that in there. When you hang it on a wall and you look at it from 4 or 5 feet away, it looks quite different, which is a good reason why you should stop halfway through and back up in the room and look at your painting. when you look at it from 6 inches away while you're painting it, no one's going to look at it that close. So it's a good idea to look at it from across the room, which is where most of the people will be looking at it. You don't do that if you go to the Art Institute. I was getting up real close and looking at paintings and looking at the brush strokes, and security guys kept coming up to me, "Sir, you have to stand back from the paintings." I guess I was making them nervous. I've created some foreground foliage here that's it really does a nice job of pushing things back. And now I'm going to put one to the left, being careful not to knock out too much of that mountain. I probably would have moved that mountain over maybe an inch if I had my ability to move mountains. I would move that over probably a little bit, but that's okay. I've put some darker grasses in there below the foliage on the right. Now I'm giving it a little spray. You'll see me using my fingers on paintings. I'm using the paints that I'm using are all, supposed to be non-toxic, this and that, but even the cad yellow hue, it's not actually cadmium. If you're doing this, you can use a towel, you can use a gloved finger. Cottonman paints is what I was trying to think of. Use them every day and I draw a blank, but Cottonman paints, they're student grade, and if you look at they're all safe to use. They don't have any toxic pigments in them, I don't believe. You can look that up for yourself, but I am using titanium white gouache, and I think that has some hazards to it. I'm not sure, but I've used my finger for that before. But I'd say be safe and use like a glove or something. But I don't know, every artist I've ever seen, you get paint all over your hands. But I don't know if people have sensitive skin. I suppose they would want to use something. Putting in just some little fine details along the river's edge here. This is probably one of the more detailed painting videos that I've uploaded. Okay, so I'm adding some details to the banks. This is a number 3 Winsor & Newton liner brush. Now I'm coming in some darker darks. Payne's gray, ultramarine blue. Save those for the end. And we'll get some more on this tree. And this is the cad yellow hue, getting some highlights on that tree. Notice I've lost a lot of my sky holes I wanted to keep. Happens quite often. It's interesting that happens. Sometimes things get bigger, things get smaller. You just keep working it. Defining that shoreline a little more. Just adding some more details into the foreground. A little darker, bring certain things out, highlight certain things, create little shadowy looking things. I like to get a sense of realism without getting too bogged down. Again, not painting something over the course of days and days. But with this technique, you're painting wet into wet. And so you're wanting that, you're wanting to take advantage of the wet and the wet. Because I've had people say, well, why don't you take your time? They'll probably turn out, way better. Yeah, to some degree. But with watercolors, a lot of times they're done in a short period of time. They were originally, I believe, meant for like plein air and then coming back to the studio and doing an oil. Um, but they really lend themselves toward doing this in one sitting and things blending together. But you can do backgrounds and things and come back the next day and do part. I've seen some where people take 3-4 days to put together layering. So there's that. I don't have the patience for that, honestly. I kind of want it to be finished, move on to the next one. And I think there's a certain energy from doing this type of painting that is present in the painting, that it happened quickly. This one, not so much, because this one's probably like under an hour. Still, I mean, an hour of time is a good amount to spend on a painting. You can turn out really great works in under an hour. So now I'm taking my fan brush and I'm just putting in some more leaves on this foliage here. Not real happy with that branch off to the side that I put in. It's sticking out like a sore thumb. And won't be happy till I've covered all those sky holes, huh? Okay. What's good is you could watch other videos and you can learn things. That's why I'm showing my stuff, even though I'm not an expert by any means, but you can see what I'm doing and say, you know, hey, this is something I was wanting to watch for. You can definitely, you have to practice, but you can definitely shave time off by picking up techniques. You're not figuring it out 100%. If you were thrown on an island, you never seen anybody paint. That's all you had was a set of paints. You'd have to figure things all out on your own. And I mean, maybe you'd be a very unique artist in your own right doing it that way. But again, if you're making this a hobby and a fun thing, you need to save some time. I've put in some darker elements here in the foliage. Now you notice how that pops now. The closest things, if they're darker, it makes more sense. I've kind of become a fan of the fan brush. I ordered like 3 of them off of a little set of 3 off the internet, and they're not. I mean, they're not super expensive or anything, but they don't hold a lot of water. They're very coarse, and they create some neat effects. So now I'm going to put my white gouache on the mountain. Again, I'm using my finger here. And you little leaguers at home, use a glove or a brush. I don't know, I feel I just have so much control. That's why I'm doing it this way. And I can pressure it on there and leave, I don't know, it looks realistic to me. Kind of like the way Bob Ross used to use a palette knife when he used to do these. Doesn't quite work the same in watercolor. Now, once you put white gouache on there, I must say, white gouache it's not like acrylic paint. If you wanted something that doesn't budge, and you can use acrylic paint, white gouache will reopen as soon as you hit it again with water, and it'll blend with everything else. If you want to paint over white gouache, you're going to have a bad day because unless you want it and you've gotten used to the effects, but the white gouache will get into everything. And it even gets in your palette. And give it a light spray. And I've kind of got into the habit of blending it together. When you spray it, it'll not only loosen up the gouache, but the paint underneath. And you could start blending it. You could do a lot of fun things with it. Now, I've tried other gouache. I've tried like yellows and greens and blues. I don't know. The colors are kind of weird to me. So far, white's the only one I traditionally have really used and incorporated into a painting. And I only use it for water and snow. I've used it. I did use it in another painting. I made like flowers and different things. But the weird thing is when you add it to colors, it makes almost like a pastel color. So you can only add like a little tiny bit to it. And you don't want to add this till it's after it's dry either. If you add it while it's wet, it's just going to blend in and it's going to lighten up everything in the background. And sometimes you might have to put 2 layers of it on because when it dries back, sometimes it just looks milky. So I've taken that brush and I've sort of blended in at the bottom, created sort of a smoky blended effect at the bottom there. Sometimes I get bogged down and I'll look at the mountain and I'll say, well, there's several lines coming down. Does it look unnatural? And sometimes if you repeat like widths of things, or there's like a group of 3 exact shapes, it looks unnatural. So it's good to vary the widths. Like if you look at the mountain to the right side, you can see there's that dark shadow inside. And you have to be very careful with the gouache that you don't overdo it or you'll just have a big white mountain. Again, just kind of blending that. And I tend to keep going until I look at it and I go, I think that looks realistic or acceptable. So I'm coming back with some blue, ultramarine blue, and some Payne's gray. And I'm trying to create some more shadows on the side here to, as you can see, that looks a little bit better. It's creating a shadow side, which was definitely lacking. Definitely has more dimension now. or blending. Now we're getting a little darker with the stream as it gets closer to us. So we have the highlight in the center there where it makes the turn from the reflection of the clouds. And if it's a little too heavy, then I'll hit it with a little spray gun. And now a little more with this tree to the right. I'm going to put in some heavy. This is either yellow ochre or cad yellow, or both mixed together, cad yellow hue. Just to get some color contrast in there. The sky holes are a lost cause at this point. Look at how much bigger it's gotten. Thing has grown. It's huge now. Just putting some darker tones in there just to vary it up a little bit. Look at that tree now. It's almost to the top of the paper. And now look at, I've blotted out that eyesore of a trunk thing that was sticking out there. In a frame, you'll never see it. So yellow ochre. Yellow ochre and cad yellow hue is one of the few lighter things you could put on top of darker colors if you use it neat out of the tube. Now going back and doing similar to the tree on the left. So now I'm taking a finer brush and I'm just going to add a little white to the banks. And we're getting real close to the end here. I do hope you enjoyed watching this painting. I really enjoyed painting it. And I hope you got something out of it. As always, leave me some comments, questions, and please subscribe. So I'm just adding a little more white back here just to catch a little highlight on this creek. Little bit'll, just a little bit, little dab will do ya. You'll see me sometimes spray and hit it. A lot of times I'm softening it if I think it's a little too stark. Just working in a little, blending a little white in there. Well, that's about it. We're closing in the end. As I said, leave me some comments, your thoughts. And I do appreciate them all. Thanks for sticking with me in this, unless you jumped forward like I sometimes do in videos. I know this was a longer one. Coming in at almost an hour. So that's it. Take a quick zoom in, take a look at the details. There's our clouds, snow coming down the mountain. You can see how that blends. Highlights on the creek and our sky holeless tree. Thanks for watching, everyone.